From blueprints to booming businesses, from groundbreaking to grand openings, this is Beyond the Blueprint. Join host Brad Howard as he takes you behind the scenes of growth and development in Mooresville, Lake Norman, and beyond. We're talking with the decision makers, the planners, the visionaries shaping our communities, giving exclusive insight into what happens before, during, and after projects that define our region. The future is being built right now. Let's go beyond the blueprint.
Good Friday afternoon. From blueprints to booming communities, from boardrooms to ballot boxes. This is Beyond the Blueprint, and I'm your host, Brad Howard. As we head into the heart of the Christmas season, thank you to those tuning in on 105.9 FM, 100.7 FM, 1400 AM, watching on social media, listening at WSICnews.com, and listening on demand with the WSIC News app. This is Beyond the Blueprint, and I'm your host, Brad Howard. Today's conversation is a special one for me personally. Our guest is someone I've known for decades, former mayor of Charlotte and former North Carolina Governor Pat McCrory. Governor, let's dive in. A lot of people know your titles, mayor, governor, but not everyone knows the person behind them. For listeners who may only know you from headlines and campaigns, when you strip away the offices and the elections, who is Pat McCrory?
That's a great question. Well, first of all, I'm not just a politician. Most people think I've spent all my life in politics, when in fact, I've only been a full-time politician for 4 years, and that was in the governor's office. Most people don't realize that I have a very extensive private sector experience. I worked for Duke Power for 29 years, starting right out of college, where I was in a management trainee program where the first year I was climbing poles.
You were climbing poles?
I was climbing poles my second day out of college. Of course, I had a political science teaching degree. My goal was to be a teacher after college, but Duke offered me a job for $900 a month. And this was in 1978. And at that time in 78, you took any job that was offered. And the management trainee program was in Charlotte. But for the first year of the program, I had to climb poles, read meters, go in marketing, go in customer service, answer phone calls, and things of this nature. And my pay was $10,800 a year. And I think the next year I got a 3% raise, maybe. So I might have got $12,000 or something a year in my second year, but they got me to 2 weeks vacation. First year, you only had 1 week vacation. So, but I felt like I was lucky to have a job. So I'm a person of very strong work ethic. I've always worked in high school and college. I always had summer jobs, working construction. One summer I read meters. Another time I did plumbing, which I was horrible at because I had no mechanical aptitude. And I'm a person, hopefully, of strong values. My mom and dad taught me very strong values. The only thing you take to your grave are your ethics and your integrity, and I firmly believe that.
Yeah, so my next question was what drew you to to work for the utility, but I think you explained it there. So I want to go back.
At that time, you'd accept. I think I was offered 2 jobs in the private sector outside of teaching. One was with a mill in either Salisbury or somewhere in South Carolina, being a manager of a mill, and another one was with Duke Power in this training program. And I'd been a meter reader for Duke Power one summer in Greensboro, so I took what I knew. Even though the mill, I think, paid another $1,000 a year, which was a lot of money.
Yeah.
But I didn't know Charlotte that well. I think I'd only been to Charlotte one time in my life before I moved to Charlotte.
Wow.
Got a roommate and bought didn't buy anything. Lived in an apartment in Charlotte off the Park Road, and from there I've been in Charlotte for 37 years, I guess.
Wow, an amazing
Maybe
history.
40, I don't know. God, I've been here long since 78, so you do the math.
That's right. That's quite a while. Hey, who just joined in the background? Is that your dog?
Oh, yeah. That's we're on our 4th dog during our 36-year marriage. That's Maddie. She was found on Highway 74 in Union County. We're a big rescue dog family. In fact, when I was governor, my wife Ann was very active in trying to decrease the number of puppy mills where they don't take care of puppies. And we never could get my legislation to pass. My wife hasn't forgiven me for it yet. But this is our third rescue dog, our fourth dog, but our third rescue dog.
Fourth rescue. That's nice. So let's jump back. Paint a picture in your childhood, where you grew up, and get us to the time that you went to work with Duke. So who's young Pat?
Childhood. I had a Leave It to Beaver childhood. I was born in Columbus, Ohio, grew up in Worthington, Ohio, just a great, my mom and dad were great. I had two sisters and a brother. We got along then, played football and basketball and tennis and you name the sport, we'd play it. And then my dad decided to move to Greensboro, North Carolina when I was 9 or 10 years old. It's a major culture change. Lived near Jamestown, went to Ragsdale High School. I had to learn how to say yes, ma'am, and yes, sir. In fact, the first day of school in fifth grade, I said yeah to the teacher, and I had my mouth washed out with soap on my first day of school.
Those are
yes, ma'am, and I love that tradition. I hope we don't lose it in North Carolina. I'm afraid we are, but. Yeah. And then went to Ragsdale High School, and then went to Catawba College, not far from you, in Salisbury, and went to Charlotte right out of college. Been here ever since.
So, in growing up like that, and then going to work for Duke in the utilities, and this will transition into politics. Working with utilities, everything takes a while. So there's a lot of long-range 10-year planning, 20-year planning. Which is the way politicians, like yourself, think about infrastructure, because when we plan infrastructure, we need to be planning for 10, 20, 30 years from now, which a lot of people are short-sighted and they just want to do the quick decision and they don't take the long term. They don't take the harder road to plan for the future. They just want to react to today. So your background at Duke, I would imagine, taught you a lot about longer range planning that prepared you for your role as mayor and ultimately your role as governor.
Yeah, it did. Actually, my dad was an engineer. And when we were in Worthington, Ohio, as a kid, he was a city councilman and mayor pro tem of Worthington, Ohio, a little village outside of Columbus. And I remember him drawing plans for a future park in Worthington along the Olentangy River. And then I started drawing. I remember cleaning out my drawers when we moved, or cleaning out after my parents passed, we were cleaning out all the old drawers, and I found drawings that I did as a young man of the Columbus, Ohio skyline, like a planner. And I put the river and the football stadium and the prison in the pictures. They're horrible pictures. So I've always been kind of interested in land use planning since an early kid. In fact, that's probably what I would have got into, or an architect. I would have liked to have been an architect, actually, now that I think about it. And that's why I love working with the development community and on transportation efforts. I still consider myself kind of a pseudo planner. And people like Joe Riley, the mayor of Charleston, had a big impact on me in planning, on how the city of Charleston was planned. And I stole a lot from him. And when I became mayor. And then Duke Power, we had planned the transmission lines, the lines through the neighborhoods, the transformers, and we had to plan and the anticipated electric growth, not just when you build it, but for the next 15 to 100 years. And so that did teach me a lot at Duke Power at the time.
All right. And we're gonna continue that discussion when we come right back. This is Brad Howard, joined by Governor Pat McCrory, Beyond the Blueprint, and we will be right back. All right, this is Brad Howard, and we're back on Beyond the Blueprint with former Charlotte Mayor and Governor Pat McCrory. So, Governor McCrory, let's go back to the start of your political journey. What pushed you from being a manager at Duke into running for that first at-large seat on Charlotte City Council back in 1989?
Well, I'll try to make this very short, but actually in 1988, we had layoffs at Duke Power Company where we laid off almost 2,000 people. I was a recruitment manager at the time, which is not a real safe position during layoffs because you're not recruiting anyone. So I did all the outplacement during the layoffs. And then after that ended, I got a packet that I actually put together for the layoffs. I got laid off. I was offered a demotion to go back to recruiter, and I said, "No, I need to leave. I've been here 10, 11 years, and great ride, but I understand my position not needed." And so I left the company. And 2 weeks later, a very emotional thing for me because I loved my job. They called me back and said, "We still need your help temporarily." Well, thank God I didn't tell them to shove it, which I thought about doing it a few times, like people want to tell me at times. And they called me back, and I helped it more with outplacement with a lot of guys in their 50s who were being laid off. And I helped them with their resumes and making calls for other jobs and so forth. And it was actually a good experience for me. And then after I did that, they called me back and said, "Would you take a promotion? We want to bring you back and we want to make you director of training." So the layoffs had a huge impact on me because after I ended up going back to Duke, I was only laid off for 2 weeks and I ended up getting a promotion. I decided I wanted to get into politics. I decided, I just found out I don't have control of my life. I need to do something I really want to do in addition to trying to make a living. And so I approached Bill Lee, the chairman of the board, had the courage to call his office up, which is now, in hindsight, this really risky thing to do when you're lucky to have a job. And I called his office up and said, "I'm thinking about running for city council." And I think it was because my dad was a small town city council member. It always intrigued me. And I hated the crime in Charlotte back in the late 80s. And I thought it'd be a good issue and something I was engaged in. And I had no political experience except for I was student body president in high school and student senate at Catawba and things of that nature. But I had not been involved politically at all. And I got a call from Bill Lee literally 10 seconds after I left the message going, "I want to see you right now." And I'd never been in a CEO's office. And I was nervous. I thought they were going to fire me and say, "You're lucky to have a job." And I went to his office scared as hell. And he knew me because I'd ran the United Way campaign for the company one year. Mm-hmm. And he asked me, "Why do I want to run?" And I said, "Well, sir, you've got me involved in leadership in the company for the past 10 years. Now I'd like to take it a step further. I'd like to get involved in leadership in this community and decision making." I don't know where the heck that came from, that line, because I wasn't prepared. And he said, "I'll help you." And it changed my life. The long story goes after that, but he wrote me a $500 check. And I didn't know what the heck I was doing.
You didn't know what you'd gotten into.
I had no idea. And I won the election by, I think, 400 votes, the fourth at-large seat of 4, the only open seat with 17 candidates. And I raised $14,000 for that. And my life changed. 6 years later, I ran for mayor and was mayor for 14 years. Then I ran for governor and lost my first race, won my second race, lost my third race. So it dominated my life from there on out. And I think it all started because I was laid off. And I realized, what the heck? I got to get control of my own life.
You have to get control of your life and you have to make a difference. And you absolutely did make a difference in Charlotte and this entire region.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, and but
I had no idea how my life was going to change at that time. My wife hasn't forgiven me for it yet.
So back on that first campaign, go back to that time because that campaign was a lot different than when you ran for governor. The door knocking, the grassroots. Talk about the campaign experience.
Oh, my first campaign was seat of the pants. In fact, every one of my campaigns has been seat of the pants, as I've been reminded by a lot of people. I always consider it like a garage band. You have to play every instrument. I had a cheap brochure. I raised $14,000. I put it all in yard signs. Then Hurricane Hugo came and blew all my signs away.
Oh, my gosh.
The election was canceled or postponed because of Hurricane Hugo. So I decided, I got on radio. I got to know John Boy and Billy. Their next door neighbor in my condo was John Boy and Billy's boss. And they let me come on the air the day before the election on John Boy and Billy, and that's where I started learning radio at that point in time. And they did a joke with me. Sue Myrick had been on the day before. It was a very controversial campaign. She'd cussed on the radio the day before, and they did a joke with me. You know, you should vote for Pat McCrory because of A, B, or C, and A was because I'm against crime, B was I'll cut taxes, or C, I promise never to say blank on the radio.
Wow.
Like Sue Myrick had just done the day before. And I remember my campaign manager calling me and go, "What did you just do?" And I went, we got nothing to lose with that.
What do we have to lose, right?
And it probably got me elected. So that's my radio connection. And I started learning the power of radio after that. In fact, I ended up writing skits for John Boy and Billy.
Did you really?
Times.
Oh
yeah,
my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So back in that time in the late 80s, when you did get elected, Charlotte was a very different city than it is today. And a lot of that growth, I think you laid a lot of the foundation that, did spur Charlotte forward. Remember when you were the youngest governor, I believe, or the youngest mayor, I believe, in the city. And, just the energy that you brought and, everything you put in place. What were some of in your words and in your mind, what were the key accomplishments while you were mayor?
Well, the number one was crime. Back when I was elected mayor, the crime rate was, we were averaging 125 murders a year in Charlotte for the past 4 years, late 80s, early 90s. It was out of control. The crack, cocaine, heroin epidemic, gangs, Bloods and Crips were taking over our city, and I thought we were soft on crime. Kind of reminds me of today, where we backtracked to what we were doing in the 80s, letting people out, not taking them to court. And I instituted a teen curfew. I instituted a tolerate no truancy program. I instituted a Target 100 program, which we targeted the top 100 criminals in Charlotte that we'd rearrest over and over and over again. And I made sure they were prosecuted. I had a march to Raleigh with other mayors throughout the state, including some of the regional mayors, including up Lake Norman area, who became very good friends, Jill Swain and others. And we put pressure on Governor Easley to put more money into prosecution, and I put a lot of pressure on our police chief to start making sure we prosecute people we arrest. And I'm very, very proud of that. Sadly, we've gone back to the way we've done in the 80s. We used to in the 80s, where we're letting criminals go, and we don't have any clear strategy, not only in Charlotte, but across the nation.
And we're making headlines in national news yet again for that very reason.
And and then, of course, it did the light rail line. And I had no plans to do that. I didn't run on light rail at all, or the bus system or anything like that. But I saw the plan that was initiated had been put on the shelf 3 years earlier because there was no money. And I started looking at I-77 going toward the South Carolina border. I said, there's no way we're going to widen this road anymore. It can't. And yet I could do the math. I knew we were going to grow a lot. So I figured that might be an alternative to congestion, is to give people a choice. And I firmly believe in giving as much choice as possible in education and transportation and jobs and so forth. And in politics, I believe that the more choice you have, the better things you can do. And that's what got me initiated the light rail system and the bus system and the trail and other things that we did, including, sadly, for me politically, up in Lake Norman area, the toll lanes, which had started under Governor Perdue. She presented that proposal. And then when I got elected, I asked all the regional mayors in especially Lake Norman area what they wanted to do. And they said the toll lane. I said, well, if that's what you want, we'll do it. And that backfired on me very quickly politically, but it's in place now. And they had a choice. I wanted to make the region to make the choice on the toll lane, not me. This is through MUMPO and several other things where they had a choice. They could either 77 wasn't in the funding for another decade to start. And they had a choice. They could do this, speed up the construction immediately, and then also build 2 additional roads in that area to connect that area with Concord. And I think they helped towards Statesville, if I recall. And they chose that one. And so I went along with them. I think everyone who did it now was probably defeated in the Lake Norman area. And Roy Cooper, my opponent in my reelection, had basically promised all those people that he'd reverse it, which I knew was total BS. In fact, he hired the guy as DOT chairman, his DOT secretary. He was the one who put the contract together. He wrote the contract.
That's right. That's right.
Which is kind of ironic. And yet that most people think my transgender issue or the coal spill or whatever, coal ash spill caused my election. I would agree with my critics in the Lake Norman area. They probably defeated me. I lost 30,000 Republican votes in my reelection, primarily due to the toll lane area. But Roy Cooper, who they voted for, went ahead and built it anyway and hired the guy who did the contract. So, and expanded the program. There'll probably be now toll lanes throughout Charlotte, which they don't talk about because of the McCrory impact. But they never stopped it during Cooper's or Stein's administration.
That's right. That's right. And we'll continue that when we come back from the break. We'll continue that discussion. This is Brad Howard with Governor Pat McCrory. We'll be right back. And we're back. It's Beyond the Blueprint, and we are joined today by North Carolina Governor Pat McCrory and former Mayor of Charlotte. We've been talking a lot about who is Pat, how did we get here, his time as mayor, his time as governor. We want to continue that discussion at the time as mayor right now, but Charlotte's growth, there were a lot of public-private partnerships. We'll talk about those first. And then get into, if you look at the list of accomplishments, what was accomplished while Mayor McCrory was in office in Charlotte? It is a list that just keeps going. And people who have moved here in the last, 5-10 years have no idea the impact he had while in his tenure as mayor. So we could just start naming, the public-private partnerships like the arena, the Whitewater Center, all the different downtown development, but in your words and in your from your perspective, what were the key projects that got accomplished while your term in mayor?
Well, probably the light rail was number one. That's had the biggest impact, especially on the south end and now toward UNC Charlotte. And that was a partnership with the state of North Carolina and the federal government. In fact, Senator Jesse Helms was the one who came up to my office, the most conservative senator that I've ever known, and it became a very close friend. He came up to my office and said, you could see Monroe from my office, 15th floor of City Hall. And he went, I grew up in Monroe, and there was nothing between here and there then. Look at it now, and look what it'll look like in 50 years. Jesse got it immediately. I couldn't believe it. Where some other senators I worked with, John Edwards, had no interest in it whatsoever. But, I got Jesse Helms, Elizabeth Dole, Sue Myrick, Mel Watt, bipartisan group of people to help us get matching funds in Washington and in Raleigh. Ed McMahon, great state rep here from Charlotte, retired now, but wouldn't have got it without him. And Lyons Gray out of Winston-Salem. Voters voted for it, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the trail that goes along, because that was a kind of a thing I put in at the very end, was that Charlotte Trail, walking trail. I added that, stole some art money. When I say stole, I borrowed it. I didn't like to put a lot of money in crappy art that no one could understand, so I put it in the infrastructure, including the sidewalks, and that was a last-minute addition I kind of put in by myself. I'm very proud of that. And then for the UNCC, I wish we could have got the line up toward Cornelius and Huntersville and Mooresville, but we were having problems with this railroad system. That's a hard line system. It's not light rail, and I couldn't get that done during our period of time. So I'm proud of that. And Johnson & Wales University, the new arena downtown, convention center expansion. we did some good stuff. Public housing. I got rid of the old public housing projects in Dalton Village, Earl Village, Piedmont Courts that were killing zones, and we did mixed use development. I got some Hope 6 grants from the federal government. We got more than any other city in the United States, and I'm very proud of that because those were killing zones, and now I wish I would have invested in there. But of course, I didn't do any personal investments while I was mayor.
Yeah, and that area, I mean, from a development standpoint, has changed. I mean, the landscape from then to now is completely different. So
I'm real proud of it, and you're in development too. But I irritated some of the developers. I required sidewalks on both sides of the street on new development. I'm not a big regulatory guy, but I saw that we can't have people walking along ditches along Providence Road.
No, that's a bad idea.
Yeah, and yet I got fought on that hard. John Crosland and others were furious with me, but I wanted to be a pedestrian-friendly area, and I wanted connectivity. And I looked at the 1920s planning of a lot of the old type designers in the 20s, including New York City and others, where there was a grid system of roads. And I'm proud of that. Although that's one of the things that's suffering. The further you go out the city, including the Lake Norman area, there's no grid system, and therefore everything piles onto one road like I-77 or Statesville Road or Beatty's Ford or whatever. And, with that many people all going into one pipeline, it's going to be a long-term problem that we're going to have forever.
That's right. And
on the north, south, east, and west side of our region.
Right, and that's a good transition too to talk about your first run for governor. The region up here, when you look at things on that, you talked about a grid system. We can only cross the lake and only go east and west on Highway 73, Highway 150 up in Mooresville, or up at 70 and 40 in Statesville. Those are your only east-west connectors across the lake. So we are, our connection to Charlotte is 77, 16. Yeah. So we're very limited in the way we can get around up here.
And you're actually limited and even widening. And sadly, the state, before I became governor, made the bridges very difficult. They didn't look long-term. We did the same thing on the Outer Beltway around Ballantyne. We didn't build for the next 50 years. I mean, before my time. So people didn't understand that the growth was going to occur with or without you.
Right. And I don't think people anticipated the growth at the pace that it is today. So people like
it's just incredible.
Yeah. People love this region.
Everyone who moves here doesn't want anyone else to move here once they move here.
That's right. That's right.
So, the NIMBY effect, I moved into what used to be farmland, but I don't want the farmland taken away right next to my house.
Right. Right.
So everyone's rather hypocritical there. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't have good planning.
That's right. That's right. You have to think about things long term.
I don't believe in Houston, Texas, where there's no zoning whatsoever. You've got to have smart planning, but you've got to make sure it doesn't go overboard either, where the houses become unaffordable to live in the region.
That's right. That's right. So now we'll transition into your run for governor. So 2008, you came up short. 2012, you won. Let's talk about, what happened. What was the difference? And I know economically what was happening in 2008 versus 2012, but what do you see as the biggest differentiator in your campaigns that didn't quite pull through in 2008, but came across the finish line in 2012?
I'd say the people in the East got to know me. The first time I ran, literally when I'd go to Dunn, North Carolina, they go, "What the hell is the mayor of Charlotte doing here in Dunn, North Carolina?" And I'd be giving a speech at the top of the Piggly Wiggly in Dunn or wherever. And they'd just be sitting here like this, listening to my speech, not reacting whatsoever. And when I found out, you had to build their trust. You had to get to know them. And I didn't try to pretend to be a person from the East or a farmer or an ag person. I continued to be who I was, and they liked me not pretending to be someone I wasn't.
Yeah,
I gained trust. And I think that's what made the difference the second go around. And I'm very proud. I had a great administration. Biggest disappointment in my political career was not being elected a second time, not because of me, but because I had cabinet secretary members, Sharon Decker and others, Commerce. I had a lot of people around me that were a hell of a lot smarter than I was, and I believe in that. And they were problem solvers and change agents. But I stepped on a lot of toes in Raleigh, including Republicans in Raleigh who didn't like me changing the status quo and some of the corruption that was occurring in Raleigh and sadly still is.
So when you look at your time as governor, what were the key economic policies or key economic policies and accomplishments that, from your words, that you put in place?
Well, we lowered the income tax from about 7.9% to 5%. Do the math. And that's a huge drop by percentage to people being able to afford to live in North Carolina. I did not believe in punishing people for working. And so I thought our income taxes were the highest in the Southeast at the time. So I did total tax reform with the cooperation of the state and Senate, or state and House, Senate and House. And we also did a whole new transportation reform. The minute I got to the state, I realized the transportation reform of gas tax going here and the need for roads was up here. We are dead. We still are regarding money needed for roads. And a lot of the road building was due to pure politics, where we're building roads out in the rural areas, which needed some roads, but it just happened to always go in the area where the powerful senator happened to live or the powerful governor. So I took the politics out of road building completely and let it go to the local level. And I'm very, very proud of that. Plus, I paid off a $2.2 billion debt to the federal government, a $500 million deficit in Medicaid, which I inherited. We had the fourth highest unemployment rate in the country. We reduced that to be the top employer in the country. We made some major changes, but in doing so, I did step on a lot of toes, both Democrats and Republicans. For that, I will not apologize.
So, other than we talked about the toll lanes, and we talked about HB2. Looking back,
by the way, one thing with the toll lanes, one of the biggest battles I had was the media and my critics kept referring to as a toll road. So most people thought the whole thing was going to be tolled. We did a survey on it. 80% of the people thought the whole highway was being tolled because they kept saying toll road.
I remember that. Yeah.
I failed miserably in that effort.
So yeah, the PR and messaging and people, just not taking the time to get all of the information.
Yeah.
So we'll be right back, and we'll talk about life beyond the governorship and the mayorship and where things are heading now. So thank you, Governor McCrory. We'll be right back. I'm Brad Howard, Beyond the Blueprint with Governor Pat McCrory, and we are back from the break. This is the final segment with Governor Pat McCrory here on Beyond the Blueprint. So, Pat, what did the first year after leaving the governor's mansion look like for you?
It was terrible. I was canceled due to my stance that I believe there's two genders, male and female, and the locker room, bathroom, women's sports, women's prison was the issue I kind of stepped into, not voluntarily, but I believed it was common sense. And 10 years ago, that was not the stance that was accepted by corporate community and the more liberal left at the time. And I paid for it. When I came home, I literally it was like I'd committed a crime. But over the 10 years, public opinion has changed that issue, and I think we were right then, and I think we were
ahead
right
of your time. You're ahead of your time.
Not out of disrespect for anyone. I always had respectful debate. I was never derogatory, but people like President Trump and Megyn Kelly ended up coming my way on that issue later on. But I actually got involved with No Labels, a group where I think both political parties are failing our country. And I'm a conservative, I'm a Republican, but no one's problem solving anymore. No one's trying to solve the problems. And they're ignoring the debt of Social Security and Medicaid and Medicare and infrastructure. And I think they're lying to the people and not being truthful about the issues that we have to deal with. They're just passing it to the next generation. And so I enjoyed getting involved in No Labels with Joe Lieberman and Ben Chavis and many others, but that kind of fell down. But I'm going to continue to hopefully share my wisdom and being truthful about where our real problems are, where our deficiencies are, and where our hope and vision should be for the future, both my city, this region, our state, and the country.
So that'll be a good transition there for us. So how did you end up behind the mic hosting your own radio show?
Well, basically, I enjoyed communications. Plus, most people think when I came home from being governor, I had a pension and insurance. I came home with no insurance or a pension from the state or anybody. So WBT approached me about, why don't you do 5 minutes on the show? Then that 5 minutes turned to an hour. Then it became 2 hours. And I did it for 3 years and had a lot of fun. We took it to #1 morning radio, even beating John Boy and Billy. And Bob and Sherry. Bob Lacey's a good friend. So I had a lot of fun doing it. But then after a while, it was, I was like talking to the same people over and over again, even though I was having a lot of fun doing it. We brought humor to politics. I said, I'm going to run for the U.S. Senate. And we were 30 points up, but then President Trump endorsed Ted Budd. And I might as well have gone to Europe. I just dropped in the polls in my negative ratings. I was at 96 approval among Republicans, and I dropped to 40% approval because of Donald Trump's endorsement. And so I quit radio to do that, but I don't regret it. Glad I did it. But I just hate to see the way politics is becoming so mean-spirited now, and the name-calling and the lack of productivity and problem solvers. I'd like to see real change agents come. I consider myself a change agent as mayor and governor and even in radio. So that's what I'm going to continue to do, project that communications. And I'm involved in some no-profits and education, nonprofits, and I'm having fun. I've got more than I deserve. I have a house, small house on Lake James, above Lake Norman. And I love it up there too.
So you've led a major city and you've led a state. When you think about leadership now, what are some of the biggest lessons you've learned, both the easy way and the hard way?
Brad, you mentioned the word vision. I think you've got to have a vision, but if you're willing to implement the vision, you've got to risk your next election. And that's what I did. I think we've got too many people in politics who care more about the next election than the next generation.
And I think you're spot on with that. And that's one thing on this show we talked about the time it takes to build roads and how, infrastructure and roads, they go beyond political tenures and election cycles and everything else. I mean, some of these roads take 10, 15, 20 years before they're built from the time they hit a piece of paper.
Your dad was visionary.
He was.
Your dad was, your dad saw the potential for that corridor long before anyone else did. And you need people like that around who can predict the future and plan for the future. And I learned a lot from your dad.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, he always thought about that. Those were the words he always used, is you have to respect the heritage, respect the past of anything. When you're looking at a deal, you go back and look at the past, and then you see where it is today and how you can lay a foundation and improve it so that 15 to 50 years from now, it was what was meant to be, not
I think
not
some
happenstance.
I think some of the local and state and federal politicians think the history started when they were born or when they were elected. And I see that in Charlotte, and they have no sense of how we got to where we did. And it didn't happen by accident. It happened by some visionary leaders 40, 50, 60 years ago. And I'm proud to say 30 years ago when I was elected mayor of Charlotte. That's how long it's been, 30 years.
30 years. Wow.
Yeah.
So what's next?
I'm an old man now, Brad.
Oh, you're not that old. So what's next for Pat McCrory?
What's that?
What's next for you? What's next for Pat McCrory?
I don't know. I'm trying to figure out my last quarter in my life. I want to serve with purpose, no matter what I do. I don't want to run for political office again. I don't fit any party structure. I couldn't get elected dog catcher right now because I am a change agent, and I accept that. But I do want to have influence and purpose. And I think that's the goal of all of us as we age, is how do we continue to have purpose? And it's my job now to provide the wisdom about what I've learned, both good, the bad, the ugly, and communicate that to future leaders and help develop those future leaders.
So on future leaders, what would you tell to young people that are interested in politics or getting involved in the community. How do they do that, and what would you advise them to do from your experience?
First, understand history, understand capitalism, understand how civics and government work, which very few young people know at this point in time, and then take a risk and run for office if you can. But also, don't think that is your life. Have another life outside so you don't take this political stuff out of perspective and start thinking that that should control your life. And I think we have too many people at local, state, and federal office where politics has become their total life. And I got in that a little bit myself. It's addictive. And you've got to have ego checks around you, no matter what office you hold. Just because you get a letter saying you're the honorable doesn't mean you're actually honorable. You've got to deserve it, and you've got to respect the office.
So what gives you hope about North Carolina's future, even with all the divisiveness we see in politics today?
When I go to a manufacturing plant, or when I see a construction site, when I see the hard workers, when I meet some young, brilliant people who have a work ethic and have brains that I never had, that gives me hope. The next generation will do what they need to do. They just need to cut through the fluff and the social media. I mean, my parents, when my generation came up, they were going, "Oh my God, there's no hope for the future." The biggest thing, we've got to respect our Constitution, that thin piece of paper, and respect the offices in which we're elected. Respect our police officers, respect our teachers, respect the elected officials, but they have to deserve the respect by ethics and values also.
And I think that's a very good point. A lot of times, respect, I guess, is not what we witness in politics anymore. There used to be, a respectful discussion. Now it's a polarized, here's my line in the sand, here's my line in the sand. And, you're never going to accomplish anything until you come to the center and talk. And that's,
well, it's not just coming to the center, it's agreeing to disagree.
Right.
And one thing I'm proud of, first of all, I left office with no honest accusations of any corruption. I've had false accusations. And those are like battlegrounds for me. When you accuse me of corruption, man, you're going to have a fight on your hands, because integrity is important. But we need to show respect for each other. And any elected officials who are calling another official names or losing their temper, you can't do that in the private sector. Why in the heck should you be able to do that in the public sector? You'd be fired.
Absolutely.
Private sector.
Absolutely.
It's ridiculous. And I don't care if you're wearing a red or blue jersey, show respect for the office.
Absolutely. And
respect the constituents of the office. And I expect the constituents to show respect for the system, because that's all we have. That's all we have. It's a thin piece of paper that we have to trust.
I agree. I agree with that. And as we head into Christmas and New Year's, is there a message you'd like to send to the families across North Carolina?
Yeah. Think of the word grace. We have more than we deserve. And we're lucky to have what we have, but don't take it for granted. Don't take what we have for granted and start thinking about leaving this place a better place than when we got here.
That's right. Leave it.
That's what my faith tells me.
That's right. Leave it better than we found it.
Exactly. Exactly.
Right. So, Governor Pat McCrory, thank you so much for joining us today and being willing to talk candidly about the highs, the lows, and the lessons of a lifetime of public service. To our listeners, thank you for spending this Friday afternoon with us here on Beyond the Blueprint. As we head into Christmas, here's hoping to find time for faith, family, and a little reflection on the kind of leadership we want in our communities and our state. I'm Brad Howard. Merry Christmas from all of us at WSIC, and we will see you next Friday at 3 as we go Beyond the Blueprint. And thank you to Governor Pat McCrory.
Thank you very much, Brad.
Thank you again.
Merry Christmas.